Welcome to another edition of Crosstalk, your state Senate edition, featuring State Senator Mike Brady, who joins us on a regular basis to keep you up to date on some of the things that are happening, not only up on Beacon Hill, but here in his district. Senator, welcome back.
Thank you for having us. Appreciate it.
Let's kind of start up. Here you are, the 194th General Court for this particular time for the legislature. We're in the second half here in 2026. Give us your perspective. How are things looking up on the State House here in late February?
Well, considering some of the federal cutbacks that we deal with, and that's scary every day there's something new coming out of Washington, we're in stable condition in the Commonwealth. I serve on the Ways and Means Committee, so we've been having hearings all across the Commonwealth about the budget. The budget, as you know, the governor presents it, goes to the House of Representatives, they deal with it, and then it comes to the Senate afterwards. And there's always a little bit of differences from between the Senate and the House, what their priorities are. So it goes to what's called the Conference Committee. They hash out the differences, then it comes back to us for a final vote, then we present it to the governor. And then the governor has a right to do 9 seat cuts if they feel necessary, and it comes back to us for a final vote after that. So we've got some time. We've had a hearing in the State House already in the GAC room, and then we are going to have hearings all over the Commonwealth. I'm going to be hosting one down the Cape with Rep. Kip Diggs. And, you know, considering everything, things are okay on the Commonwealth. We do have what's called the rainy day account. But like you and I have to balance our checkbooks, we have to balance our checkbooks at the State House. We cannot deficit spend. So you don't want to, you know, take all the money out of that rainy day account because you got to save money for the so-called rainy days when times are tough. And it is a unique time because of everything going on in D.C., you know.
It's worth asking. We know that it's been just a couple of weeks since the governor put forth her fiscal year 2027 budget. It's been proposed at around $63 billion. What stood out most to you about the proposal, and where do you see the biggest opportunities and the biggest challenges in this budget? Well,
the biggest part of the budget is healthcare, and as we all know, healthcare has gone through the roof, and we have to cover, you know, people that are less fortunate, and all that, and employees who work for the Commonwealth with the healthcare. There was a proposal to increase the GIC contributions, that's the General Insurance Commission, the ratepayers. And, you know, I've got a lady, I had a lot of calls from people that work for fire departments and police departments and local employees and all of the above. And I even received a call from a woman who's being treated for cancer in Whitman, and they were going to increase her rate pay, her contributions, and people are struggling out there. You know, people have to decide between their heating bills, their food, and especially the elderly people. So we were able to write some correspondence, and I appreciate all the input from the constituents that wrote into my office, whether they email me or phone calls, to try to pause and put a pause on the rate increases. And we reached out to the governor. She did put a pause on it, which thank God, because, you know, people are struggling every day. You know, food costs are through the roof. You go to the market, you know, we had an increase with the egg prices. That was due to a chicken disease a couple of years, but everything else is so expensive. Even a pound of bacon, I found out they don't even put a full pound of 16 ounces when you go to buy a pound of bacon, like 13 ounces. It's like they're ripping off the consumers. So the good news is we were able to put a pause on that increase on their health insurance. So that's used to save the taxpayers some money, you know.
Well, it's worth noting that during COVID, I feel as though the manufacturers took advantage of the tough times that we were going through. And if you've noticed, a lot of things that you buy in a grocery store has dramatically shrunk. Where you think you're getting a certain amount, whether it's a box of cereal, a roll of toilet paper, regardless of what it is, it's much smaller, but you're still paying the higher cost.
Yeah, it's crazy. And as I mentioned, you know, heating costs have been through the roof. We did reach out to the administration about that too. I own a 3-decker in Brockton where my last bill was $1,400 a month because I pay for the gas heat, the hot water, and the gas stoves. And at least I have a job where I can afford it. But elderly people, as I mentioned, they struggle between food costs and medical costs and everything else. And the heating bills have gone through the roof. So we've tried to have the governor put a pause on that as well, you know. And kicking the can down the road doesn't work either, you know. I mean, you thought you're going to get a break, and then it's going to be on your May or June bill. So we're trying to keep an eye on that, because that's another thing with this insurance commission, that last year they went up quite extensively on the heating bills, and plus you got to diversify. And this is the thing that, you know, you can't put all your eggs in one basket. You know, it's great. I'm all for the environment, but you know, we heard what happened with the windmills in Nantucket Sound, some of them breaking out and caused our fishing industry some problems. So I visited some farms about anaerobic digestion, which, you know, you got to, our landfills are being overcapacitated. You can't fill every trash in a landfill. So I visited some farms that they take food waste. So Noonan Brothers and Coca-Cola and Polar Beverages bring their food waste out to these farms, and it's in a big vat, and they cook and make methane gas to sell to the utility distributors. And it's a win-win-win. It's another alternative to create energy for Massachusetts. And it was amazing. And you'd have to have 100,000 cows with cow manure that would stink up the whole neighborhood, so people would be not happy with that. It's in a vat. It's all enclosed. It's like a balloon. So the gas expands, and they sell it back into the grid.
And let's not forget that your typical landfills, AKA, if you look at, there's a landfill that's on Thatcher Street in Brugden, those emit methane, but I would think that it's such a slow process that it would take a long time. So it's interesting about the anaerobic, these vats. And
I've learned about it in the past couple of years, because I'm on the energy committee now, and I've learned about this, and it's another alternative. And you mentioned Thatcher Street, because that, you know, people used to bring their trash to the dumps down there on the East Bridgewater-Brockton line. You can't do that anymore, even though you'll still find people throwing bags of trash on the street there.
Anything that you noticed in regards to, with the governor's budget, again, House 1, in regards to education? I know that we've had conversations on this show several years ago when the Student Opportunity Act was passed somewhere just before COVID, and then we had to kind of pause it for a little bit because of what was taking place at that particular time. I believe that there's a conversation about $7 billion that is tied to the 27 budget. Have you heard from your district in regards to the need for more funding when it comes to education?
Well, as you know, we always are trying to get more funding for the district every year. And we do increase Chapter 70 money, but with the Student Opportunity Act, that money can only either go towards education or transportation. It can't go anywhere else. And our roads are in deplorable condition, especially with the winter we're having now. So there's always trying to get a balance between both sides of the coin to fix our roads and keep them up and running and safe for the pedestrians and the people that drive the roads every day. But also you want to make sure the school is funded properly. And I know that Brockton went through a deficit a couple of years ago, and you know, everybody pointed the finger at everybody else whose fault it was, but the bottom line, they faced a deficit. Now the Women Hanson school system's facing a deficit, and I represent both communities, and I've gone there with Representative Sullivan Almeida to listen to what their needs are, and I know they had to make some cuts, but we're hoping to get more money into the budget for that. But again, we have to balance the checkbook. We can't deficit spend, so there's a need to fund a lot of different things, and I'm a big supporter of public education. I always have been, and it's going to be tough with some districts this year, you know.
You talked about being a member of the Senate Ways and Means. Talk about your role, and how do you make sure that you're balancing statewide fiscal pressures with the needs of your district when you're sitting on this committee?
Well, we've had a hearing in the GAR room to start this year. We're going to have hearings all across the Commonwealth. I'll host one down the Cape. And yeah, so you listen to the different departments that come before you to advocate on behalf of their budget. And then if we have the means to make everything at the end work, but you got to live within your means. You can't deficit spend. So we hear from different departments. They'll advocate on what they think their needs are and so forth. And we listen to them. And I appreciate input, especially from the residents, because that's the people I represent. That's the people that vote for us. And you want to try to get money to each town I represent. I represent, you know, all the way from Randolph, Avon, the city of Brockton, the Whitman, Hanson, Halifax, and East Bridgewater. And schools are a big part of that. I'm a big supporter of public education, but public safety is a big thing. I got some grants for firefighters and stuff, and then we also passed a law about PFAS. You know, I get money in the budget every year for the water that comes to Brockton and Whitman and all those towns because there's PFAS in the water there. But also our firefighters, we passed a law recently their equipment that's waterproof, which is, saving their equipment from getting wet, but there's PFAS in it. So cancer rates with firefighters have gone through the roof. We finally passed a law to not have PFAS in their equipment moving forward. So, because cancer rates for firefighters are very difficult. And, I had a girlfriend that suffered from cancer years ago, and she passed away. And, you want to protect the people that are out there saving our lives every day on the streets, and you want to make sure their equipment's safe.
What is, looking at this particular budget and looking at different situations, you talked about the Whitman-Hanson School District, their funding issues. I know that Brockton is part of your district as well, knowing that they have a new mayor, but then they also have, a significant ask. I had a chance to speak with Mayor Moises Rodriguez, and he's talking about buying a desal plant and maybe building a new high school. How has your job changed since you first took office as state senator, and some of the asks that your district come to you for, that you're always up there working on their behalf to try to fulfill?
Well, every year is kind of, you learn from experience and all that, but every year is kind of different. The economy usually goes in 10-year cycles, so some years you'll have some good funding coming in.
Right.
Like when we built 5 elementary schools in Brockton several years ago, we got 90% reimbursement from the state.
Those are good times.
But now it's tough, and I know that the mayor is looking at trying to build a new high school there. They're looking to bond out some money, and then the desal plant. And this is a big debate going on with the city. We were under a water ban in Brockton. You couldn't even water your lawn, never mind get new business growth. And there's a big need for housing out there, so that's going to hit into the water supply. So it came down to two resources, either MWRA or the desal. That's when Jack Eunice was mayor.
That's right.
And they went with desal. The only issue is they don't own it, the city. They have pay for the right to use the water, which costs money, and then they pay for so many cubic gallons every year to take the water. So I do support the city buying the desal plant. I know this is a big debate, and it's up to the city council and the mayor, but that way they can market to other communities. Whitman needs water, Hanson needs water.
Yeah.
Even Easton that sits on swampland, it's not potable drinking water. So, and then it would ease the burden on Silver Lake, because I represent those towns near Silver Lake, and you want to protect the fisheries and all that stuff, but Silver Lake's water levels have still been down, so the city dipped into Furnace Brook, Stump Brook, and the Ponset Pond, but you want to protect the environment down there too. So I feel like I'm married to two different people, the people who represent the towns around Silver Lake and the city of Brockton. I try to balance it both out, but that's why I get money every year in the budget to clean the chronic bacteria, the phosphorus, and the PFAS in the water down there in the Halifax area.
Yeah, it's worth noting that if, in fact, that desal plant is purchased by Brockton, and let's say Whitman or Hanson does decide that they want to buy the water, I believe that Whitman currently is under contract to buy water directly from Brockton.
Right.
But wouldn't you have to play a role in that for Brockton to be able to own something that is not in? Wouldn't you have to help with the home rule petition?
We are waiting to see what happens with the city of Brockton. If they do go forward and vote for it, it may come to the state for, like you said, a home rule petition. So I'm waiting to see, and that's why they hire the lawyers they do, because they're the legal jurisdiction, and we'll see what happens with that. But again, a lot of towns outside of Brockton, they do supply water for, and even Halifax in times of need, and other towns, if there's a big shortage and so forth, we've got to supply water to all these towns. So it's a kind of a balancing situation. But I think in the long run, it will help ease the burden on the water we do take from Silver Lake.
Depending on what happens with the budget, my curious question would be is if you have this experience with the budget each year, how much does what the governor puts forth, how does it differ when it finally gets to the Senate? Because we know it's going to go to the House next.
Right.
They'll do their version. How much does the Senate tweak what is initially put out?
Well, even when I was a member of the House, and I'm fortunate, in Massachusetts, we work together across party lines. Unlike you hear from Washington, D.C., Republicans and Democrats, we work very well together. So we all have our input. So if I need certain earmarks, certain proposals to cover my district, I've been very fortunate because I am on the Ways and Means Committee, and my chairman, Mike Rodriguez, has been very good to me because I represent a very diverse community. I got Randolph, which has a large Haitian and Asian population, and then I have other towns like Whitman, Hanson, and Halifax. It's much more conservative. conservative, so I got to balance out. But that's why I try to get money to cover all the aspects of my district. You know, as I mentioned, I get money for the water down in Halifax and Silver Lake and that area in Hanson, and then I get money for public safety in Brockton as they go in. And schools is kind of balanced across the board. You know, we've increased funding for the schools every year. Of course, it's never enough. I'm a big supporter of public education. I went through the public school system. And you know, I'm a big supporter of early education, like kindergarten, and then the free colleges, too. That's a big thing that, you know, I worked at Superior Bakery as a kid going to Massachusetts Community College when I worked nights. It's a great starting point. Plus, to get early college education while they're in high school. They can take college courses now, get credits, and then they go to Master, and then they may transfer to Bridgewater State or Stonehill or whatever other schools are available, you know. So it's a great starting point. And education is so crucial for people to get ahead. Plus, in the trades, I mean, there's a waiting list to get into schools like Southeastern Regional and the other schools. I mean, you know, you got a plumbing issue at my house. Like I own the 3-decker. I live on the second floor. If there's a leak, it doesn't matter if times are good or bad. You need a plumber on the spot. And thank God I know some people in the business. But there's a big need for the trades out there too. Carpenters, plumbers, you name it. You know, so.
Definitely worth noting, and it's also worth noting you mentioned Superior Bakery. As I grew up as a kid, and I spent some time in Brockton. I actually grew up in that area on Warren Avenue, and there's nothing better in the springtime than to smell the bakery, Superior, you know, baking. It was fantastic.
Yeah, I worked there for several years while I was going to Massachusetts, and a lot of good memories. But even before that, as a kid, I'd go to Beaver Russell School, and I'd buy, you know, my mother would send me to get some Italian bread at Superior Bakery. Well, I'd get 2 loaves because you eat 1 loaf on the way home. I was a lot thinner in those days. I wore it off. But, yeah, and Mr. Farini just passed away. Joe, the father. I went to school with the son, Joe, who owns the place now. Yeah. But the father, a great icon, and still a family-owned business, which is great, you know, because we got to support our small businesses out there, you know.
I believe you also serve on a committee that's geared towards public safety and first responders. I believe that you filed legislation that would strengthen protections for EMTs, ambulance attendants, and healthcare workers. Why was this issue important for you to take on, and where does the bill stand?
Well, one of the bills we did pass to get some grants for the public safety personnel, but you can never do enough, and they're the first responders that are saving our lives day in and day out. You know, I know my father having a couple strokes there, and the fire department be there, and the ambulance and so forth, and then public safety with guns out there. You know, I always support legal gun owners, but a lot of the illegal guns that, you know, you hear shootings every day, and it's scary out there, so you got to support your police officers as well. It's a tough balance, you know. People out there that are struggling, and then the drug addiction situation, which is a major issue. You know, they had a big thing about OxyContin. It's a miracle pain med, which was great. But later on, they found it's an elephant tranquilizer. And I know our attorney generals have sued the big companies for that, but they end up getting hooked on heroin afterwards because they can't get enough OxyContin. And young, I call them kids now, but young people that never would have tried a drug in their life, they get hooked on OxyContin and then switch to heroin. And I don't care if you're coming from a wealthy town of Weston or whatever, or a city of Brockton that's less fortunate, but it's still a major epidemic all across the country. You hear these stories up and down the East Coast and all of that, and a lot of violence goes hand in hand with that, unfortunately. So that's a big issue we've got to keep addressing, and it's tough because our emergency rooms are overcapacitated. When the Brockton Hospital, you know, they had their fire, that was closed. So the South Shore Hospital in Weymouth, where my cousin works as a nurse, that was overburdened. Then the
Good Sam.
Yeah, the Good Sam, which was owned by the Stewart, which took advantage of people. Now they're owned by BMC South, but both hospitals are overcrowded, and they don't have enough nurses and healthcare workers in there. So that's a big issue that we're trying to address as well. I believe one, or if not both, voted to maybe go on a strike. They haven't done it yet, but they're suffering because, you know, you want to make sure those healthcare workers are paid fairly, and, you know, health insurance and everything else has gone through the roof. So it's tough.
Earlier, you had mentioned earmarks, and when we were talking a little bit about the budget. What are your concerns as a legislator, knowing that there's an ongoing discussion trying to get the monies that the state normally gets from the federal government, but there's a back and forth between what's happening down in D.C. and our state government? What are your concerns in regards to earmarks that have been promised to districts or that have been worked on that could go by the wayside if this disagreement between the state and the federal government isn't worked out.
Well, it's a very concerning issue for us, and I try to get earmarks for public safety every year for the schools. As I mentioned earlier, I get earmarks to clean up the water down in the ponds in that area. And then our charity guild in Brockton, they help out a lot of less fortunate families, and they got cut quite a bit of money last year in the budget, so luckily I was able to get some money for them. And our neighborhood health center, never mind the two hospitals we mentioned, but the neighborhood health center in Brockton, that helps out a lot of less fortunate, they had major layoffs because of federal cutbacks. And it's scary out there because every day there's different news coming out of Washington. You don't know what to get. You try to stay ahead of the game or be prepared. Like the old Boy Scout motto, be prepared. I was a scout back in my younger days. But it's tough out there because every day there's different news coming out of D.C.
Correct me if I'm wrong, you're the vice chair of Community Development and Small Business Committee?
I'm the vice chairman of Energy, and I'm the vice chairman of, I'm the chairman of Public Service. I'm sorry, vice chairman of Energy and the other committee I'm on as well, you mentioned, yeah.
Okay. What are you hearing from small business owners these days in regards to the economy and tough economic times, especially with rising energy costs?
Well, that's a big issue, which we've been trying to address with the administration in healthcare costs for small businesses and stuff, you know. I hear from them, a lot of businesses can't get the proper help, like Chinese restaurants in the district. They all, some are closed on Monday and Tuesday now. They can't get enough help. It's tough. And, you know, like Doyle's in Brockton, they've been able to stay open, which is good. They got sold. Tommy, the owner, had a mini stroke. Thank God he's doing okay. But it's tough for small businesses to survive, and we want to help them. They're the blood and whatnot of the community, you know, and a lot of them are family-owned business too. It's not like a big corporation. And don't get me wrong, we need some big corporations as well because they provide jobs. But some businesses I've been able to help get some tax breaks for. I knew during COVID some small businesses got a nice chunk of change, but that ended. So you got to try to support them, and I think keeping their tax rates low is important, and try to keep their health care costs. And it's a tough balancing act sometimes.
I've known you since you were a ward councilor on the Brockton City Council and making your way to the State House, the state rep, state senator. But you're somebody who's always, I remember in your early days, an individual who found his way to as many events as possible. And I think you still do that to this day. What are some of the events that you've been able to attend since the last time we sat down that you feel is important that you, either yourself or staff members, are attending to let folks know that there's somebody up at the State House serving the district that cares?
Well, I think that the joke is I'm still single because I'm never home in this business, so I am able to attend a lot of events. I was just at the Elks Club in Randolph, which I represent the town of Randolph now, and they swore in some new members. But I try to visit senior centers as much as possible. I have office hours in different parts of the district when I can. And, you know, I represent, as I mentioned, a very diverse community. Like 1 week was a Haitian New Year, another was a Lunar New Year with, you know, Haitian Independence Day was on January 1st, but then the Lunar New Year. So there's a big Asian population representing Randolph. And then I try to visit senior centers all across the district, whether it's Halifax. I was at a recent meeting down there with some of the elected officials talking about what their needs are in Hanson, and you know, it's a unique job, but I think I'm able, because I am single, I'm able to attend all these things. And I joke about, if not that anyone would put up with me that long, that's a whole nother ballgame, but I'm able to attend a lot of these things because I am single. And though I do miss out, I have nieces and nephews, and now my nieces and nephews have kids of their own, so I'm a great uncle. But that's the only thing I do miss, because I love children, and I never got married, so I never had any children. But you know, my job is my district is my family, so I reach out to other people, and I'm very fortunate. I have a lot of good support from residents out there, and without the resident support, I wouldn't be able to do what I can do, you know.
For a little fun fact, I believe somebody came to you to ask if you would help push the need to identify a state pizza, the Greek pizza. Talk to me about this.
Well, like we have the Toll House cookie, which is a cookie of Massachusetts. I've been asked from a local pizza place in the community that I represent about filing the 10-inch so-called barroom pizza. And I was a little concerned because I don't want to fight with the people from the north end who have the big square pizzas, but they have those small pizzas there now too. So it went through the committee. It did get approved out of committee. It's in the next stage. But to make the Commonwealth the 10-inch pizza, the Pizza of Massachusetts, and we have the Venus in Whitman, we have the Linwood in Randolph, we have the Town Spa in Stoughton, and the Cape Cod Cafe in Brockton,
Don't forget them.
and all the other ones, Tinray's and all of the above, and a bunch of other places in Avon as well. So it did pass committee, and it's going through the process to make it the so-called Pizza of Massachusetts. So hopefully we'll get through. And I don't miss too many meals, as you know. I'm always on the road, so I do eat a few pizzas once in a while. So
you don't think this will turn into a kerfuffle? Because I know there was one over the state rock song, and there were questions as to like a song from Aerosmith compared to another artist. It's not going to turn into that, is it?
Fortunately, I've been getting a lot of support, and it's funny you mentioned the pizza. I've been getting more publicity on this than anything we've done, even when we pass $1 million budgets and all the above, and we try to balance everything. I've been getting more positive response, and even as I mentioned, the North End, they have those small 10-inch pizzas in the North End now. So I was a little concerned about my friends in Boston, but I'm getting a lot of good PR out of this, and it's gone through committee, so we'll see what happens.
You might have to enlist in somebody who lived here locally and somebody who's kind of a big deal these days, Dave Portnoy, who is a lover of many of the bar pizzas. And you mentioned Venus. He actually he was visiting there not too long ago and mentioned as to being how much he loved Venus and some of the other bar pizzas locally.
Right. Well, it's funny that my sister raised a family in Whitman. She's passed away several years ago, but my niece, when she comes up from Virginia, she'll go to the Venus in Whitman here. And of course, I grew up going there and the Cape Cod Cafe and several other places. And I'm trying to think of the place in Hanson.
Damien's?
Damien's. They got a pizza there and so forth. And then I don't represent Pembroke, but you got Poopsies that makes a pizza. But I represent Avon and Shooters, and then the Linwood and Randolph and all of the above. So
long gone are the tip tops of the day as well.
Tip top, and they had the Express too. They delivered the pizza. But even the Phantom Gourmet and all of those big TV shows have visited these places and done shows about the pizza. So so hopefully we'll see what happens with this bill. It's gone through the committee process, and it's in another committee, but I'm getting a lot of positive response about it. So
well, again, we'll have to see if we can reach out to Dave Portnoy and see if Dave would want to somehow get involved with this push if you need it. But we got less than 2 minutes left here. If any of your constituents want to reach out to your office, if they have any concerns, what's the best way for them to reach out to you and share what their thoughts are?
Well, my office number is 617-722-1200, 722-1200. My email is michael.brady@masenate.gov. Nowadays, I'm like an old man, but nowadays more people email the office than call on the phone. I've had some changes in my office. My chief of staff, Al, just retired. He was in his 70s. And Donna, who did a yeoman's work. So I've got this new gentleman, Tobias Collins, who runs the office.
Oh, we know Tobias.
Yes, and I have some other friends. He says hello, by the way. And I've got some new people on board, and I've got a new, Jim Breton covers my local area in Brockton a lot.
Best.
And then Bob Smith, who's from Brockton. He used to work for another rep, Fran Mara. And I've got another guy, Jason, who's taken over in second in command in the office. So we've had some changes, but that's the two ways to reach me again, 722-1200. And then the email is michael.brady@masenate.gov. And I'll tell you, one good news with that GIC, when they were looking to increase the rates that the ratepayers had to pay, if not for the input of a lot of residents from the community, like I mentioned, the women and women who are suffering from cancer, but a lot of unions and other groups that contacted my office were able to reach the administration and put a pause on the increase in the ratepayers for their health insurance. So,
well, Senator, thank you so much for joining us, sir.
Thank you.
And we want to thank you for tuning into a show like Crosstalk. This is your State Senate edition. So we try to do our best to keep you up to date, especially here in the Whitman and Hanson area. Until our next conversation, have a great day.